Hello and welcome, friends. In Unit 1, up till now, we have talked about the various definitions of communication and importance of communication. We had a look at some clips to understand how communication is used for planning and decision making, and also to improve coordination among team members and to motivate somebody. Then we talked about the various objectives of communication, and we understood that there are many purposes that communication serves. In the last session that we had, we talked about the communication process, the standard model. We talked about how it is important for the sender to encode his message in a language which is understood by the receiver. We talked about how feedback is important, which tells the sender that his message has been received accurately by the receiver. And we also understood that noise is something which disturbs the whole communication process, which pollutes the whole communication process. And we also said that the other word for noise is barrier. Then we talked about the various elements of communication, and I had promised there that I'll be talking about channels in a little more detail in the forthcoming sessions. So here I am. Today we'll be talking about the various channels of communication, right? Now, what exactly is a channel? So channel is something through which message flows from the sender to the receiver. Many a times, let me caution you that channel and medium, these two terms are used interchangeably. So you would find in many books, when they depict the standard communication model, they use channel / medium, right? Which means they are using it interchangeably. So in some of the books and some of the writers use them interchangeably, right? But for us, as of now, we should understand that channels are ways along which the message is flowing from the sender to the receiver. So we'll understand what it basically means by looking at the types of channels. Now please have a look. The channels can be of two types as shown in this particular picture. One, external communication, and second one is internal communication. Now let us try and understand what we mean by this. Please understand that we said channel is the way through which the message is getting transmitted from the sender to the receiver. So here the sender and the receiver, how the message is getting transmitted, either through external communication or through internal communication. So let us try and understand what we mean by this. Now please understand what we mean by external communication. The sender is part of an organization, while the receiver is not part of that organization. Receiver is somebody from outside the organization, and that is why the communication between them is known as external communication. I'll give an example. If you, as a student of Department of Business Administration, are interacting with a supplier who would supply you refreshment for your fresher. So you are talking to a hotelier, you are talking to a restaurant owner who would be supplying you refreshment for your fresher party. Now that can be an example of external communication, because one party belongs to the college, to the department, while the other party belongs to some other organization outside the department. So external communication. And within external communication, outward and inward. What do we mean by this? Outward is when the sender is in the organization and the receiver is outside the organization. Just like when you are sending across a message to the restaurant owner that please supply us 25 dosas on this particular day. So you are sending the message outward, and that is why this type of external communication is called outward. Inward is when the receiver is inside the organization and the sender of the communication is outside the organization. So when the restaurant owner tells you, he calls you and tells you, okay sir, we would provide you 25 dosas. So this particular communication is external communication because the restaurant owner is outside your organization, but it is inward because he is the sender of the communication. He is sending you the message and you are the receiver of the message. So this message is flowing towards you, and that is why inward, right? If the message is flowing from you to some external organization, then it is outward. If the message is flowing to you from some external organization, then it is inward. Fine. Now let us talk about the internal communication. Now here both the parties would be inside the organization, right? So maybe you talking to your teacher would be an example of internal communication. Maybe you talking to some other faculty member in some other department can be an example of internal communication. You talking to your friend who is from some other department, the college, is an example of internal communication. Is that fine? You talking to your friends is also an example of internal communication. Now let's have a look at the types of internal communication that we have. We have formal and informal. So we'll understand what is the difference between the two. Formal is basically that kind of communication which flows through some well-established channels. So maybe you are sending an application to your teacher. So well-established channels, and that is why it's a formal kind of communication. On the other hand, if a particular teacher does not turn up on a particular day, and you somehow get to know that he is not turned up because he is about to get married, though it has not been communicated to you formally through some established channels, but you still get to know, then that is an example of informal communication. For example, when we tell you that the exams are going to take place on a particular day through a notice which is sent to you on maybe your WhatsApp number, then this is formal communication. On the other hand, if you get to know that okay, today this particular teacher had his birthday, then since this has not been communicated to you through some formal channels, you have got to know about this from your friends, or maybe while the teachers were informally chatting with you, then this becomes informal communication, right? Now let's take examples. So what are the examples of external communication? I said the receiver or the sender, one of them is from outside the organization, and that is why it is called external communication. Outward means you are the sender and somebody outside is receiving the communication. So maybe you are writing a letter to your customer apologizing for some delay in the delivery of the product to him. You are writing to your suppliers asking for raw material. You are writing to your bank asking for some loan, credit, curse, or maybe you are just sending across an advertisement telling about the products that are being sold by your company, by your organization. Then the recipient of this particular message is the general public, and that is an example of outward communication, right? Then let's talk about inward communication. Some customer sending you a message. Now this message is coming inside the organization, and that is why this can be an example of inward communication. Customer may be telling you something, praising you for good product, or maybe lodging a complaints against bad quality product. Some regulatory bodies like the RBI, or maybe some other regulatory bodies, maybe the government agencies, asking for some details, seeking some explanation from you, right? That will be an example of inward communication, because they will be sending you some communication. They might be writing a letter to you, please provide us these information. So then this is an example of inward communication, right? And then there can be other examples as well. Now let's talk about formal communication. Message carried through established channels. So I told you, for example, if a notice is sent to you on your WhatsApp number, if a notice is pasted on the college notice board, if you send us an application telling us that you have not been able to attend class because of some illness, so these are all established channels, and such communication is known as formal communication. On the other hand, message transmitted as grapevine. Grapevine, let's understand what is basically grapevine. Grapevine is the informal chatter that takes place among the employees. That is called grapevine. For example, I gave you this example earlier also. If a teacher is not well, he does not inform you from using some formal channels, but you still get to know about this. Why? Because maybe you are having some informal interaction with your other faculty members, so you get to know as to what has happened. So this is an example of grapevine. I'll give another example. Many a time some of the students don't come to the class. We do not have any formal communication from their side as to why they are not coming to the class, but we somehow still get to know why they have not come. Maybe they have gone on a picnic with their family members, or maybe they have deliberately bunked the class. So how have we got that information? Through some informal channels. Maybe we have interacted informally with the friends of that particular student who has missed the class. So these are examples of informal channel, and I tell you, informal channels also carry a lot of communication, specifically inside the organization, right? So it's not as if informal communication is not important. And where do we require informal channels? Where the formal channels are not adequate. So the teacher has to interact informally with the students to find out why Saurabh Puneda was not there in the class, for example. Since we have no communication from the formal channel, either his parents calling us, or he calling us, or sending us an application, so we have to inquire informally from his friends, and the friends will tell us, "Arey sir, he is not interested anymore in studying. Oh, he is doing something different. Sir, he has gone on a picnic, and he has told his parents that he is going on a picnic." Right? So these are examples of informal communication. And why this has happened? Because through formal channels there was no communication. The formal channels were inadequate. That is why we had to rely on informal channels. And please understand, as I've said earlier also, informal channels are also very, very important. Now let's talk about another categorization of channels, and this is having three different categories: vertical channel, then we have the horizontal channel, and then we have the diagonal channel. Is that okay? Vertical channels, you know already, upward and downward. They can be broken down into these two categories. If the communication is moving from lower level in the organization to the higher level, then it is upward. If it is moving from higher level in the organization to the lower level, it is downward. Horizontal means at the same level, right? Horizontal means at the same level, and then diagonal means at two different levels in two different organizations. We'll understand them one by one. So let's have a look at vertical channel between different levels in the same organization. Upward is when somebody is sending a letter, an application, requesting, so the students requesting the teacher, or the teacher requesting the principal. Appeals, demand. So demand is generally flowing upward. It is flowing from the lower level in the organization to the higher level. So the subordinates may demand something from their boss. Grievances, the subordinates may have some problems, may have faced some problems. So this is what we know as grievance. So they are voicing their grievance to their boss. Okay, sir, the seating arrangement is not good. Clear hai? Right? And many a times the lower level in the organization also advises the top management. For example, many ministers might be advising the Prime Minister. So this again is example of upward communication. Then many a times complaints are being lodged. The Prime Minister is not going to lodge a complaint in front of the minister. It's the other way around. The minister might lodge a complaint to the to the Prime Minister, or the teachers might lodge a complaint in front of the principal. So these are all examples of upward communication. Then we've got periodic reports. Reports are generally sent by lower level in the organization to the higher level, so that the higher level can make decisions. So these are examples of upward. Let's talk about downward communication. Goals. The goals are decided at the top level, and then they are communicated to the lower level of the organization. Ideals. What are our values? Instructions generally flow from top to bottom. Likewise, decision is taken by the top management, and the lower management has to abide by that decision. Order is given by the top management. Commands are given by those higher up in the organizational hierarchy. So the boss will give a command to the subordinate. The teacher will give a command to this student. The student cannot order the teachers. So that is why these are examples of downward communication. Then we have got information. Many times information also flows downward, wherein the boss is sending across some information. For example, the faculty member sent across information to you that exams are going to take place in this particular week. So that is an example of downward communication and feedback and motivation. So many a times the boss gives a feedback, the teachers give their students a feedback, the teachers try to motivate the students. So these are all examples of downward communication. Let's talk about horizontal channel. Communication between same level in the same organization. For example, some discussion taking place between two students, BBA first year and maybe BCom first year. This can be an example of horizontal communication. Then we have got conflict resolution. When you are trying to resolve some conflict has taken place and we are trying to resolve. For example, two of your friends are fighting each other and you are trying to resolve that conflict. This is an example of horizontal communication. And cross-functional teams. Cross-functional teams basically means a team formed with representatives from different functions in the organization, from HR, from marketing, from sales, from operations, and generally these cross-functional teams are formed so that they can work on some project. For example, a company is about to launch a new product. Now, how they have to go about this? For that, they may form some cross-functional teams which will have representative as from HR, from marketing, from sales, from operation and finance, from all the functions, from all the divisions in the organization. So this would be an example of cross-functional teams. All the people will be at the same level, and that is why these are examples of horizontal channels. Then we are talking about diagonal channels. What happens in diagonal channel? Between different levels, but please also understand, in different teams. If it is a communication between different levels in the same team, this is vertical channel. If it is between same level in different teams, it could be horizontal channel. But if it is between different levels in different teams, it is an example of diagonal channel. So let's have a look at what we mean by it. By looking at this particular figure, there are two firms, firm A and B, and you can understand there are three levels of hierarchies: the CEO, followed by the manager, followed by the office assistant. Now this is the horizontal lateral channel. Same level, either in the same organization or in between two different organizations, horizontal lateral channel. In the same organization, between two different levels, between CEO and the manager, it is vertical channel. And between two different organizations, now this one is important. What do we mean by diagonal channel? Have a look. Two different organizations, the communication is taking place between a CEO and the manager. So naturally there are two different organizations in two different levels. So this is an example of a diagonal channel. For example, I'll give another example of a diagonal channel. A BBA student talking to the faculty in BCom. This would be an example of diagonal channel. Fine. So please go through this particular video again and again until you have understood everything. You can pause the video wherever you find it difficult to understand and play the video again. Understand all the concepts that we have discussed today. Right? So thank you very much.